Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I'm your host, Al Richards, and today we're doing a special show. So, my good friend Evan Dunn is going to run, or he is running for the Utah State Senate. So, today we are actually going to be talking about representation matters. And if you want to know what that is, stick around and listen to the show because you're going to find out. Evan, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to be with us today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing this show almost 5 years, and this is the first time you've popped on.
Yeah, right. I think that I was on one other time in my capacity at USARA. I think that
Oh,
we
okay.
did a show at your studio years ago when you were first getting going. So it's been quite some time. But we
You
talked.
are
Yeah,
right. I
yeah.
completely spaced that off. Yeah, you
No,
came
it's
into the
yeah.
studio and we did a show, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, Tiffany was there many times as well
Yep.
doing a show. And yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
when I heard that you was going to run for the Senate, Utah State Senate, I thought, my gosh, that is so freaking awesome because I know you spent a lot of time up there on the Hill.
I do.
And you have gotten yourself so well educated and know how the whole system and everything works. I mean,
Yeah.
even talking about it, I got God bumps over here. And to have someone like yourself, why the title is Representation Matters, is because you're right, Evan. We need somebody up there that understands addiction and
Yeah.
how it works and how hard it is to get out of it. And having you up there, someone like you up there to be able to explain, because you've lived it as well, right? You're just not
Right.
pulling stuff out of a book. You've
Right.
you've been there yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I am a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder myself, and so I know what it's like to kind of walk that journey of recovery. My day job is I'm advocacy and public policy director for USARA, so that's the Utah Support Advocates for Recovery Awareness, and I've been with that organization for let's see, about 10 years now.
Oh,
So
gee.
it's been a great journey though, and so I've really found my niche there doing the policy work. And one of the things that we talk about in my work with USARA is we use this phrase from the disability rights movement, and it's nothing about us without us, right? If you're going to be having conversations about people like me, a person like me should have a seat at that table, right? And that's been a really important component of our advocacy work all throughout my time at USARA is that they're having conversations about people like us, people with substance use disorders or people with mental health conditions all the time up there. It impacts a lot of different pieces of legislation. And prior to our work, we were not actively involved in those conversations. Like we did not have people with lived experience in those conversations, in having those chats with elected officials. And as a result of that, they made some choices on behalf of us that were not maybe in our best interest, right, historically. And if we look back, far enough, people like us at one point were institutionalized, right? We were put into asylums, locked up, and kind of thrown away the key. And that was how we handled mental health and substance use conditions in our country for years and years, right? And it was I don't think it was done out of ill will. I don't think it was done because people thought poorly of people necessarily with mental health and addiction issues inherently. But I think that that's what they thought they could do to help, right? That they didn't know anything better. And so as this movement has kind of progressed at the national level and even at the local level, we've gained more of a voice in those conversations to be able to say like, this is what's helpful for folks like us. This is how we can be treated to actually get us to a place where we're better because the vast majority of people can and do recover from mental health and substance use conditions. Like it's not a life sentence. They're mostly, they're chronic conditions, but they're manageable, right? And most of us live really happy, fulfilling lives on the other side of that. And so it's possible. And so, we're living proof that recovery is possible and that it happens all around us all the time. Another thing that I say in my work is that recovery is not rare and recovery is not random, right? People are getting better all the time as long as they've got the support and the resources to do that. And so it's up to us to advocate for those kinds of resources.
Absolutely. And with going back to where you said how that we used to lock them up and throw away the key, it's not knowing, right? It's
Yeah.
that fear of not knowing and not educating ourselves, because being someone who's been on both sides of it, I had no clue how to handle things.
Right.
and the majority of people don't. And I would almost bet somebody that's up there at the hill has a family member or loved one, or maybe even themselves that are suffering
Yeah.
with and don't know the direction to go, right? Because we have that shame and we have that fear of being judged, especially if you're somewhere that's higher up, where
Yep.
you're being looked at continuously. And it's great to have someone like yourself who wants to go up there and represent the whole community, because we definitely need it. It's times are changing. I mean,
Yeah.
they really are. Like you said, I'm seeing a shift, and I'm seeing a shift on another side too, where it also seems like um, the recovery community is kind of splitting in a way.
Yeah.
However, the other side, people are really opening their eyes and going, man, there's so many different ways of recovery now.
Yeah.
And
Right.
science is coming out with so many different things. And having someone like yourself who is seeing this and around it and talking to people, my gosh, how amazing is it to have somebody up there that can be able to start educating more of our city, our state,
Yeah.
to get people to go, I've been looking at this the wrong way the whole time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so like I'll give you a brief story about that. So a couple years ago, we had a newly elected state senator from like Utah County and the southern part of Salt Lake County. And this person is someone who, I probably wouldn't see eye to eye with on most things, like just most issues out there. But I went to go meet with her right after she was elected up at the Capitol. And so we were behind the Senate chamber, just talking in the cloakroom there, having a conversation. And I told her some of my story and just about my recovery experience, and that I'm a person in long-term recovery. And she got really emotional, and I was I asked her like, what's coming up for you? And she said, I've had a sister who has struggled all of her life. And I didn't even know that people got better from substance use disorders. I didn't know that people recovered. And I just thought this is how it was, And so like it just gave her so much hope to know that people do get better. And she hadn't seen that in her own life, And I think that what's true is that most of our elected officials have a personal connection of some kind, right? And that could be, someone, like this person's sister who has always struggled, right? And they don't know that recovery is possible. They don't know that people get better with the right kinds of support. And so it's been my job to help educate people on how we get better. And it's been interesting. Part of what inspired me to run for office was kind of just this political climate that we find ourselves in right now. And in the last year, in Utah, we've had some interesting discussions come up around what to do around homelessness and around people with mental health and substance use conditions. And we, I think we've made a lot of progress over the last decade in terms of kind of moving the needle and making more evidence-based kinds of interventions available to people, things that we know that work. But there's an effort now, I think, to kind of undo some of that work or go back a little bit in some of our progress. And that's just natural. It happens in politics, right? If you stay around long enough, you kind of see the pendulum swing back and forth. But we're kind of back in this kind of criminal justice kind of intervention now, right? Where people are wanting to use the criminal justice system again to, take care of people with substance use disorders. And there's always been a role of people for the criminal justice system in that, right? Like the criminal justice system is in the state of Utah and nationally the largest provider of behavioral health services that we have. But I think that there's a valid question as to whether or not that should be the case, right? Like, should people have to wait until things are so bad in their life that they've broken the law or that the criminal justice system has entered their lives to get help? I mean, people I would hope would get help before that. But the criminal justice system has historically and is still the kind of catch-all. And so this last year there was a conversation that started around homeless services and how we're going to help kind of meet the current need of people experiencing homelessness on the street. And one of the ideas that had come up and that was being pursued was building a giant campus by the lake to house homeless people. And they were talking about building a 1,300 bed facility and they wanted to make most of those beds non-voluntary. So they wanted to just lock people up, and they wanted to use the civil commitment laws that we have to be able to say, if you've got a mental health or substance use disorder, we can lock you up against your will and force you into this facility kind of indefinitely until we can, figure out what to do with you, basically, or get you better in some way. But we know historically that forced treatment is not as effective as voluntary treatment. It's just not, right? And so like, and not to say that there's not a role for, in some cases, the most kind of severe kind of cases when somebody's completely out of their mind, they're not rational and thinking about things, and they're a threat to themselves or others. Yes, those people need to be, helped in a way that might be more non-volitional. But just locking people up in mass has never been a good fit for our country. And so, I and some other advocates banded together to oppose this thing. And we started calling it a detention center because that's what they were building, was basically a detention center. It's like it would be a kind of specialty jail for people with mental health and substance use conditions. And we really got very vocal about it this last year. So much so that like the governor had included a line item for this facility in his budget to the tune of about $20 million ongoing and $25 million one time in funds to make this thing happen. But even that amount of money wasn't sufficient to build what they wanted to build. I mean, this is going to be a facility that's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we and with some national partners kind of came out really strongly about this. We issued op-eds. We had conversations with elected officials. We were up at the Capitol talking to the members of our legislature. And we luckily have been effective in defeating that so far. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen this legislative session at the very least. Our legislature is saying this is too complex. It's not defined enough. We don't even know what this thing is supposed to be. It doesn't sound good to us. It's so politically dicey for them right now that they're not going to pursue it, which is great. But it could come back. And, I think that when these kinds of things are being considered, it's important to have a voice in the room that can represent the actual needs of people with substance use disorders, right? Like, and not just, what do we think needs to happen on these people's behalf, but like, what is the actual lived experience that people have had in recovery. And so that's why, that's part of why I'm running, is because I want to be in the room when these conversations are happening. I'm already, up there having these chats with our elected officials, but it's different to be like in the chamber itself, be another, senator, and then to be able to talk to your colleagues in a different kind of way about how these issues actually play out.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh. Excuse me. What you just described almost to me sounded like a concentration camp is what they're looking at, and at one time I was even thinking, me and some friends, and I've heard of some other people who have the same idea about having a facility that has all types of recovery ways inside one facility,
Mhm.
right? 'Cause you and I both know, one shoe doesn't fit all.
Right, exactly.
Like AA works for some people, it doesn't
Totally.
work for other people.
Right.
Therapeutic community works for some people, it doesn't work for other people.
Yep.
Oh, but to be able to have a facility, to a one-stop shop, to go in and someone says, okay, this isn't working for me. Okay, well, let's walk across the hall and let's give
Yeah,
it a
totally.
shot, right?
Yeah, that would
This
be
this
phenomenal.
fits.
Yeah, I would love something like that, right?
Yeah.
And and if they wanted to pursue something like that, like I'd be on board and like wanting to be involved in those conversations and how we shape that out. But what they were really looking to do is this kind of one size fits all. Let's force people into this program that they're not going to have a lot of choice in, and that just it's not going to work. To your point, like yeah, like recovery is an individualized process. Like we all get better in our own ways, even people that are in the same kind of recovery circles, right? Like I could be in an AA meeting and sitting next to somebody whose recovery program in AA is completely different than mine, right? And so,
Yeah.
and so like it's always going to be something that we have to be, we have to take an individualized approach to, and approach from kind of this human-centered or person-centered way. We're going to continue to work on that, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we can have something like that, where people really have good options and they can choose what their future looks like, right? Because yeah, we know that like when people have choice, and that makes a huge difference in the outcome. When people can choose what their future looks like, that kind of agency gives a lot of people some hope. It gives them some direction, and it gives them like just a feeling of ownership over what their future looks like.
Absolutely. Because, yeah, we both know that when you force someone into something, it definitely does not work.
Yeah,
My past wife, the first couple times she went into rehab, she did it because of me, and that didn't work.
yeah,
It had to be her choice, and I think Mallory, the other co-founder of
yeah,
the
of
Healing
course.
Success
I do.
Summit.
Yeah,
It's like when she was going through her stuff,
yeah,
and Chuck, who helped her, amazing man that just changed her life completely. She screwed up, and he got in her face and said, "What do I got to do to get you to realize that your life is worth something, that you are
yeah,
worth something, that you are somebody?" And she even told him then, she says, "I don't want to be forced into recovery. I want to be inspired into
yeah,
recovery." And that's why she
totally.
named the book Inspired to Recover.
Yep,
Because again, I think that helps a lot of us because, yeah, okay, maybe there are certain times we need to lock someone up.
sure.
However, from what I have heard, because of what I've been around and have seen, it's like you end up knowing more about addiction and everything else being in these places than not, right?
Right.
I mean, you're around other people who are not looking for help, who are good with what they're doing at that time in their life.
Yeah,
Not saying they
totally.
can change, because all of us can change. We can all make
Right.
a choice one way or another at any time. So, yeah, again, I just think it's great to have somebody to have an individual up there to be able to explain and get people to open their eyes, because we go around blind.
Yeah, totally.
We are,
Absolutely.
we are
Yeah.
so freaking blind, and real quick, I was one of them. I'd go downtown and I'd see the unsheltered and I'd see the addicts down there, and under my breath or even out loud, I'd say, get a damn job. What the hell
Right.
you think?
Yeah.
What's your issue, And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I find myself in it, and everything completely changed. My
Okay.
whole
Yeah.
outlook changed. Now I go downtown and I see someone and I'm like, oh my hell, I am so curious. What's their story? What got
Right.
them here? Right?
Totally.
Because we all know something pushed us to get to that area. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, Evan. None of us really wake up one day and go, I'm going to be a heroin addict, or I'm going to
No,
be an alcoholic.
no, no.
It just all of a sudden one day we realize it got too far. And once it does, we
Exactly.
don't know how to get out of it.
That's right.
And
And I
and
truly, yeah, and to that point, yes, because one of the things I think I hear a lot is that there's this notion that's out there that some people just don't want help, or that they're not somehow not ready for help. And I don't think that's true. I think that most people that find themselves in that circumstance don't want that life, right? Like living on the street is not great. It's inherently traumatic, right? Like you don't know if you're going to live or die any given night because you could freeze to death, right? Like people don't want to live that life. I think that's a really negative kind of thing to say, that like people don't want to get better. I think that's what's more true is that people just don't know how to get better, or they don't know that it's possible for themselves. They don't have that hope, right? They're maybe so hopeless. They've like had life experiences that led them to believe that this is the best that they could do, or this is like the life that they're going to have to live. But I truly don't believe that people enjoy that existence, right? Like I certainly wasn't enjoying that at that time when I was experiencing homelessness, when I was on the streets, right? That was a dark time in my life. And and I wanted something different. I just didn't know how to do it. And so it was a matter of like getting like one, the resources to find that support, and two, getting some inspiration, getting like you were saying with Mallory, getting some hope that I could do something different. And it wasn't until it was demonstrated to me that I could, that I started to really pursue something different in my life. And like there's not, it's again not to say that the criminal justice system doesn't have a role, right? Like it certainly does. Sometimes it can be used as leverage to help someone like kind of like go down that path or like start that journey. And but what I hope to happen in those kinds of situations is like when we're using the criminal justice system as that leverage, we've got this like external motivation on somebody, right? Like we've got this extrinsic motivator. But during that time, while we've got that kind of extrinsic motivator, what we really need to focus on is building intrinsic motivation, that internal desire to change, right? Like, so it's a shift in the kind of responsibility. It's like, maybe I'm in drug court, right? And right now I've got these charges hanging over my head. But in the time that I'm in drug court, my hope for those people is that they, at some point, build that internal drive to change themselves, right? And because that's what's going to sustain them after they're off paper, after they don't have, a probation officer breathing down their neck, is that own internal motivation to change. And so really we need to make that shift when they're under our care.
yeah. And also to have something like Clean Slate Utah, right? Because as far as I know, we are the only country that, if we make a bad choice in our life and we end up getting a record, that record seems to be over our head the rest of our lives. In other countries, you do your time, whatever it is, or you go through your program, it's completely erased.
Yeah.
So in my eyes, this is how I'm seeing it, is we are doing everything we can to keep people stuck in that area even when they're working their butts off to. And I've had people on my show that have said that, right? It's like I worked my ass off to get clean and get sober, and I've been doing great for 3 years, and I go to get an apartment and I can't get an apartment because of this is on my record, but I'm not that same person anymore. And
Yep.
and it's like we keep them in that box. And it's time that we start getting these individuals out of that box so they can live their life. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll share a story, and I won't say who it was, and you may know, but it's like when she was clean for a long time. She had a baby. She was honest with what she had done in her past, and she remembers hearing the nurses saying, "Oh, we're going to have another drug baby,"
Mm.
and she had been clean for 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And it's like, come on, people. You don't understand. And to be able to have someone higher up to start helping the education for individuals, yeah, this is just a new shift, I think, Evan. What you are
Yeah.
doing is so amazing. And thank you so much for doing that. Because hopefully with some fight, it won't be easy. You know that, but you're ready to fight, right?
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely.
Put
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
gloves on and you're going, I'll go 10
Right.
rounds, 15
That's
rounds,
right.
20 rounds. I don't care.
Yeah.
We're going to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think, what's interesting, and this is true of my own story, and it also like leads into me running for office, but like we develop, I think in our active addiction, develop this story about ourselves, right? And like, and we get really stuck in that story. And so for me, part of my recovery process has been changing that story that I tell myself about myself. But what's hard is that there's all these reminders of that old story that are out there, right? Like whether it's a criminal record or just the nurses at that person's hospital experience, whatever that is, like there's always these reminders of this person that I used to be, or this person that, like, the story I used to tell myself about myself. And I've changed that now, and it's hard to swim upstream sometimes and keep that new story going when there's all these reminders of the old story out there. And what I see trip people up more often than not is that they buy back into that old story about themselves. They're like, yep, they're right. I'm just I'm useless. I'm a piece of junk, whatever it is, right? Like, who do I think I am? I might as well go back to substance use, right? And it's kind of this like F it kind of mentality, right? And so a lot of the changes we've instituted at the in the systems level in terms of like record expungement have been around that, right? Like building a new, like allowing people to claim their recovery, build a new story of themselves, and not have these constant reminders of who they used to be. I'm a person who had a pretty extensive criminal record at one point. Now I don't. And in my office at work, I've got my clean background check framed behind my desk, right? Because I'm so proud of that now. And what's interesting is that those of us that have gotten record expungements that had a criminal record at one point, I think that we can all speak to the newfound importance that we find in like being abiding citizens. Like, it is really important to me that I do not have a criminal record now, because I know what it's like to have one
Yeah.
and I want to protect it, right? Like, so like I don't even speed. Like I'm really, like I think about that when I'm in the car. I'm like, I don't want to break the law because like I don't want a record, I don't want a record again, right? Like I worked so hard to get rid of that, and it had haunted me for so long. And so, this new story I've got about myself is really important to me. It's because I've developed this new story that I even thought that I could do something like run for office, right? Like I think that there there was a time in my life where I wouldn't, that would have been, if you told me, you know, 20 years ago that I would be doing this now, I would laugh in your face, right? And so, but here we are, right? And so I'm doing
Yeah.
it, and what I hope is that at the very, very least is that I can inspire other people in recovery to dream big, to think outside the limits of their own mind, right? To
Yeah.
maybe to challenge those stories they're telling about themselves that keep them stuck or keep them limited. Because like I certainly had that, even into recovery, saying like, well, I might work in politics, but I could never run for office. Like, well, why not? Like, we can do big things, right? So like, so what? So maybe I hope the listeners of this show today can like think critically about what limiting beliefs do you still have? What's holding you back? And what would it be like if you didn't have those anymore?
Yeah. It's like with my coaching, I either hold up a pen or I have a stick and I call it my magic wand. And you ask the client, if this was a magic wand, what would be the first thing that you would wish for?
Hmm.
Right? Because it is possible. We also do this thing called green line, red line, green line, and it's you got a straight line going across this way, and this is life, and you got a green line going up. Excuse me, red line going down is negative, and you start on the negative first. But then
Hmm.
when you start asking people what life would be like on the green line, it switches something in their mind,
Totally.
going, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh," because it's visible. You see
Hmm.
it on a dry erase board, and it is possible. And you and I both have seen, you've seen a lot more than I have, but we've seen so many people recover and get
Yep.
their lives back and change. And I really do feel how the system is right now. It is hard. It is very, very hard because, and this is a show where we don't pull any punches, but I feel like there's a lot of hopefully we can change a lot of recovery places too, because I've seen people and heard of people, and I've had people tell me on the show that they got kicked out of a number of recovery places for little teeny things.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and I was talking with somebody who left the recovery work. He said, Al, I just had enough of it because I was seeing people who really wanted to get well get kicked out of recovery places for acting like addicts because
Right.
they were still addicts, right? Their
Yep.
mind was still
Totally.
in
Yeah.
that mentality.
Yeah.
And then what do? We push them right back out to start all over again.
Yeah.
And it would be cool to see down the road, hopefully in the near future, to start seeing a little more change in recovery places too, where you have a little more leeway. Now, yeah, if someone was caught drinking or drugging inside a facility, okay, yeah, I can say, hey, maybe we better sit down. We can give you another chance, but to kick them back
Sure.
out automatically,
Right.
because we both know, man, it is a struggle. I
It
mean,
is. Yeah.
I watched my past wife. My gosh, she struggled so hard. She fought like hell, and it's just hard. It was just to be
Yeah.
able to see that where other people can do to breeze, other people not. But when you have the right support system and a place that people can go that is there for you and have a little bit more empathy, I think it
Yeah.
would make a change too.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy because addiction treatment is the only healthcare kind of intervention that we've got where we demand the outcome of the intervention before we've given the intervention, right? Like, so
Yeah,
like, could you imagine if someone went to Huntsman Cancer Institute for their, leukemia, and we demanded that they be cancer free before we gave them chemotherapy, right? Like, that's just doesn't
good
make
way
any
to put
sense,
it.
right? But we do
Yeah,
that all the time in addiction treatment. We demand that people be completely abstinent from all substances before we've given them the help, the therapy, and the all of the interventions to like make them to be able to do that, right? And
yeah,
so like I think it's we've always kind of gotten it backwards, and it's tough. Like and then we call people, we give people labels like that they're treatment resistant or that they're beyond help in some way. And I just don't think that's helpful because I don't think that people are ever treatment resistant. I don't think we've got treatment resistant people. I think we've got treatment resistant programs, right? Where people we've got these kind of zero chance policies or zero tolerance policies, and they really harm a lot of individuals that are trying to do better or that want to do better, but we just don't give them a shot.
yeah. Well, like you say, we put that shame back
Hmm.
in.
Yep,
It's like,
for
how
sure.
am I ever going to get my life together when I don't even have an opportunity to have these opportunities? And when you've been doing it a long time, it takes our brain many months to start firing healthier neurons and start opening our eyes. And my coach is out of Canada, Dave and Susan Kenny with Emergo Academy. When they had their facility in Canada, they wouldn't even sit down and work with anybody for about a week and a half when they first came in. And what they would do is that basically just focus on getting them comfortable and feeding them healthy food. They would all have very good, healthy dinners to be able to start getting their nutrition up because they found that it was a little easier to work with individuals who had that chance of getting comfortable first before they start nailing them,
Yeah.
with helping them, get through all this. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's tough. And then like I just yeah, it's I don't know, like I remember having a conversation early in my time at USARA with somebody who's like been a mentor of mine and I said, what do we do when somebody like has a relapse or somebody has an incidence of use? Like what do we do? And they just said, we just love them, and like that's been so powerful for me like throughout my journey in at USARA and recovery is just that like yeah, like we I know from my own experience that when I had those, had those struggles, like if I had an incidence of use or I had a relapse, it was like I was the most tough on myself. Like I was already saying all the most horrible things to myself that anyone else could ever say, right? Like, but what I wasn't doing was being kind to myself. But other people could show me how to do that, right? And so like I had other people love me through those times when I wasn't capable of loving myself. And now I think that that's so important that we keep doing that, right? Like that we show people that love and that grace because like they already have all those negative messages. Anything I could negatively say, they're already saying to themselves. But what they're not saying to themselves is like, you can do this. You deserve it. You can get better. And we love you, you know?
Yeah. Boy, I got a big smile on my face when you said that. I had my show yesterday that'll be out on Monday.
Mhm.
And this beautiful young lady that I was interviewing, she said something that really resonated with me. And she goes, Al, it's okay to borrow love.
Mhm.
It's okay to borrow it till you learn how to love yourself.
Yep.
And you just said it right there, Evan. I mean, really,
Totally.
you just said it that you had individuals that was there to love you and help you when you didn't even love yourself at the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
And when we can get to that point and hopefully down the road in the future have a facility where people can borrow that love until
Mhm.
they could get that to themselves to where they can love themselves. And it's something I've been working on for years, and I would say probably since the last year and a half or so. I was interviewed on a podcast and the host asked me what brings me joy. And I said, yeah, that was a very good question. That's a really good question. I've never been asked that. And then I thought, no, I have been asked that question before. And what was my answer? Oh, it's being with my grandkids, hiking in the mountains, however, I didn't say it that time.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, I got these God bumps on me. And I went, for the first time, I can honestly say I'm in love with Al Richards, who he is as an individual.
Nice. Yeah.
And it felt so good to finally say that. It took
Yeah.
me 62 years to finally get to that point where I could fricking say it. And I owe it. And I'm serious when I say this and I get emotional because I owe a lot of it to my past wife. And I owe
Mhm.
it a lot to the recovery community and the guests that I've had on my show that has helped educate me and help open my eyes and help me realize, I told Janan once leaving an AA meeting, I says, you people get it. And she's like, what do you mean? I says, you guys that are in recovery and you're in long-term recovery, you get it. You understand life. You see life in a whole different way, the way that the rest of us need to see life and view it. Because I have not met one person in long-term recovery that says their life sucks.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Not
Yeah.
one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right.
They all look at it in such an amazing way and they're so grateful for everything, everything. And why? It's because they've dug themselves out of a freaking pit that was so hard to get out of, but they see life differently. And then, as they call certain people normies, right? We bitch and moan and complain about everything when really our lives are really freaking great if we just opened our eyes to see it. And all these individuals in the recovery community, they get it, they see it.
Yeah.
So I would say to our listeners who haven't been around addiction or who don't understand it, hang around individuals who are in long-term recovery because they will change your life.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been cool, in my work at USARA, we've got a program, our Arches program, and they go into hospitals and emergency departments and meet with patients who, have some sort of substance use related crisis. But we've had this interesting side effect of our work there because we realized, the doctors and nurses in those facilities, they're doing the best they can with what they've got, but they're only ever seeing the problem of people kind of coming in and out of the ER in the worst moments of their life. And so they get kind of jaded because they're only ever seeing, these patients, like in the worst possible situations, these, medical crises, and they're not seeing the always the outcome. But now that our coaches are there in that facility, and our coaches are all people in recovery themselves, working with those doctors and nurses, they do get to see somebody in recovery. They do get to see that people get better, right? And it's changed how they approach patients. It's changed their approach to the people that coming through the hospital doors because they know it's possible now, right? And like they may not have believed that, before they met one of our coaches, but now they have irrefutable evidence that it's true. And I hope that if I'm elected, I can be that to the legislature, right? That like I can be that example up there that, people do get better and that we need to believe from a systems level that people are capable of recovery, right? Like if we can hold out that hope as individuals, but also as lawmakers, I think that makes a big difference to how people are going to treat this issue.
Absolutely. And it's definitely something needed. And you even see it like in with famous people, right? You got like Robert Downey Jr. Gosh, so many other people too who battled with substance abuse, where their career was pretty much tanked.
Yep.
And certain individuals hold them to the side. They gave them that love, that care, that nurturing. These other individuals borrowed their love, and now you see how successful they are again, right? So it is possible. It's
Yep.
it's definitely not a dead end road.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me again. Yeah, again, Evan, I'm just grateful that we have somebody like yourself that has gone through, stepped on so many stepping stones. And you said even yourself, you didn't realize that you'd be where you're at. I mean, again,
Yeah.
if someone told me 6 years ago I'd be involved with the recovery community and doing a podcast and holding an event every year, I'd say, yeah, your head's so far up your rear end, you don't know what you're saying,
Right. Right.
But I am so grateful that it's this way. I like to use Steve Jobs where he says, if you connect the dots backwards of your life, you'll see you're exactly where you're supposed to be this very moment.
That's right.
And I do that quite often. And I realized that God has been grooming me this whole time without me even knowing it. And I'm being groomed right now for something in the future. I don't even know what that is, of course, but I know I'm being groomed, to get to that. And I'm kind of looking at it that way with you. You've been groomed and not even knowing it till you got to a certain point, and then you're going, huh, I can do this, right? I
Yep.
can do this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of it's wild because like, I think that it is an honor and it is a privilege and it's humbling in a lot of ways to be able to do this work at the level that I'm doing it. And then, I think what's interesting to me is that yes, it's like my name on this button or on the campaign sign, but it's not really about me. It's about all of us, right? And it's about the community. And so I hope I can always be a good steward of that and that I can always be that representation to people that need it.
I heard something on a Jay Shetty podcast. He was interviewing Madonna, and Madonna said she's gotten very spiritual herself the last 28 years, studied Kabbalah and has just really changed her life around. And she said something that she realized that we are all here to receive so we can share.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing right now, Evan. You have received and now you're here to share, right? To make a difference. And that's what we need. We definitely need to do that and share our experiences and share where we're at. And I like to use the 12 disciples a lot. Jesus, when he was starting to spread his message, he didn't pick 12 perfect people because there really is no such thing as perfect individuals. He picked the broken. And I had somebody on my show about 4 years ago out of Colorado. She had a friend tell her, she goes, there are those that God called back home because he knows their battles are just so strong and it's just embedded in them so hard. He pulls them back home to get them out of their suffering. But there are those others like yourself and so many other individuals who have worked hard to get themselves to get where they're at. And those are God's angels. They are now the ones out there lending their hand to help other individuals in their journey. And I just like to look at it that way. I mean, we've got so many angels out there that are out there doing what they can because they've lived it. They know it, right? I can't say I know what it's like having a baby because I've never had one,
You're right.
so, but I could have somebody educate me on it, right? To get me to understand, which it would be my daughter because she's a professional in that area.
Right.
She's a doula. She
Yeah.
understands. But yeah, to have other individuals, and especially to where you are working to get right now, man, just I just say to our listeners, where can they find you? Where can they go to
Yeah.
help support you, Evan?
Great question. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, I was just thinking, while you're saying that, I heard a U.S. congressman many years ago come and give a speech, and he said the only time he's ever voted for the perfect candidate in his life was the first time he voted for himself, and then every subsequent time he voted for himself, he had to know like all the things that he had to compromise on, and so I think that like we get caught up in this like notion of perfection, but like it's just not possible, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so yeah, it's hard, but I think we need people that are real people, like serving in public office. We need really just everyday folks up there. And so if people want to support my race, they can do that by visiting my website. It's evandone.com, so EVANDONE.com, or find me on social media at Vote Evan Doan. So
Okay. Would you do me a favor and either text that to me or email so
yes,
to make sure I
yep,
don't miss anything? I can just
yep,
copy and paste
yes,
so I
absolutely.
can get it out there. And I'd like to just kind of feed off of what you talked about perfection. I took a training course um, not too long ago, and the person who teaches the class, he says he doesn't like the word perfection, and he says the way he sees perfection is reaching a point that can no longer be improved,
Mm,
and there's always room for improvement,
yeah,
right?
always.
And I like to use professional sports people for example, because you look at somebody like Tiger Woods, who is one of the greatest golfers that's ever lived. Some people said he had the perfect swing and everything, but he was always working on his swing. He didn't look at himself being perfect. He looked at himself as constant improvement. And that's what we need to do every day. And again, with you fighting to get to the point where you want to get, that's that stepping beyond that perfection, right? It's improving, and there's always going to be that room for improving.
Yep,
So we
absolutely.
can we can make a difference.
Yep. And I want people to reach out to me if there's something that's important to you up at our state capitol. Let me know. I'll give you my email too, Al, and so feel free to have people reach out to me. 'Cause I'm always happy to talk about what's important to people up at the legislature.
Yeah. Well, you heard a couple of mine. We
Yep,
definitely need to make changes in recovery centers.
we
That's for
definitely
sure.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else? I mean, gosh, we talked about maybe even going a half hour, an hour. We're coming up on an hour already. It goes
Yeah,
by so quick.
I
Is
know
there
it. Just
anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
that's all that comes to mind on this show. But happy to come back any other time, Al. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you have something that's coming up, Evans, that you'd love to talk about, just reach out to me.
I will.
We can do another special show. I'm good with it. That's what's cool about being the founder and the host of your own show is you make your own rules.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for all you do, Al. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you to all our listeners. Thank you, Emergo Academy, for being our sponsor. Greatly appreciate it. And we're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.